Why do you want to be a healer? What is the motivation? We're going to be exploring the truth about the wounded healer. The wounded healer within. Now, why you want to be healing is the question that most practitioners never stop to ask themselves or often think about in different stages of their career. What motivates them? Particularly at the early stages when we are maybe trying to set up a business or we're trying to, get into a line of work where we can use our healing gifts or helping gifts, right? And it is coming from a place of conscious purpose, but it's also what often we don't realise. There's things going on in the subconscious that is trying to heal our own unexamined wounds, right? Our own pain, our own suffering. So when we look at the wounded healer, and we look at the shadow aspect, obviously there's powerful gifts from the wounded healer, but we'll look at the shadow. It can tell us why we can thrive in our healing work and how then sometimes it can lead to real burnout. And it's getting us more into that thriving instead of burnout. And sometimes there's a lot of things that people don't realise are the deeper causes of their burnout as healers, as helpers, even nurses, doctors. There's small things that are, not just the obvious, that actually can impact a healer to be healthy or not. And that's what we're going to talk about, right? So the 3 challenges about being a healthy healer, and a healer that is fully in their purpose, doing what they're supposed to do, right? So challenge number 1 when you want to be a healer, right, is hiding behind other people's methods, hiding behind other people's approaches, hiding behind other people's techniques, because we're not owning our innate gifts and what we're really here to do. We all do it to different degrees, right? So, we can what we call lean too rigidly or too much towards certain industry approaches or training approaches. If you look at even the medical field, that's a good example. A lot of doctors and medical professionals can feel very squashed and constricted and frustrated because the system, the medical model, stops them doing the greatest work and can prevent them from actually doing what they really want to do with their patients and clients and serve them well, because it's an outdated approach. There's certain things that are very standardized when they know that everyone is an individual. And in holistic medicine, I studied in a holistic approach. And I believe in a holistic approach to everything, business, marketing. I believe in relation to purpose and your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual well-being. And when we get too fixed in certain approaches, we miss the bigger picture. Now, we can all experience that in different ways. I've experienced it in the medical field, I've experienced in the healing, coaching and therapy field. But one of the biggest things was out of that, what I could see. Now, I've been buying from the holistic industries actually about 40 years, right? And I've studied in the industry for over 35 years. And one of the things that I would say is that one of the things that I could see, and I could see it, I think it's because of my gifts, right? And I'm very sensitive to energy. I notice things, I notice patterns. But I seem to notice when healers or therapists were focusing in their business the wrong thing. So it's interesting how I ended up helping, that's one of my areas of work, is the Spiritual Marketing Club, is helping business owners. But one of the things was I could tell with different things when people really were not in their lane, and they were doing it just because the training school or their college or their modality or the teacher told them that, or that they just felt that they had to just add another tool, another skill, rather than embodying who they were. But one of the things that I saw with other healers and therapists was they were coming from a lot of different wounding, which I will talk about, that really, so they were keeping their clients and they were trying to encourage you to keep coming back because they were taught that. But they weren't doing it from, the wisest way, right? So sometimes when we don't shine our own gifts, we don't own our gifts and own what we're really here to do because we're so working within somebody else's system. Now, I do believe that we all need to have good foundational skills and understanding and awareness, right? And I do believe in standardization to some things to make sure for safe and effective practice. And I do know a lot of practitioners, there are some people, healers, that think you shouldn't need to learn from someone else. But I often find a lot of these healers lack a lot of awareness, insight, and can do a lot more harm than good and just don't see it. So, we have to look at things from a different perspective. But what I do recognise is that once someone had learned the foundations of something and a method, they have to find their own strengths within that and recognise what is going to work for them and what's not going to work with their clients, and the more that they understand what their strength is, they become better. And many people, many healers and therapists will study many modalities and then discover that they're not right for them. It's not right for their clients. It's not right. It doesn't work. Now, my own personal story, other than seeing this, in other healers, I remember I didn't have good physical strength. I struggled, particularly early when I first started my business. It was mostly started as a mail order business, but I did want to start doing my stress management and holistic. But I really struggled physically. I didn't have a lot of stamina. I had some structural issues that impacted my ability. So quickly, I had to keep learning the hard way that certain physical therapies, even though I'd studied them, was not going to be where my career went. Right? And interesting things happened. It was like synchronicity. So even though one of the things that I had tremendous results with, even when I was doing Reiki, like people would come and would only need for things that normally would have to go to modalities for weeks or months, they seem to have really good effect. But it was like almost overnight, my clientele kind of shifted and I started really just honouring more of where I was really attracted. I'd always been interested in personal development at that point, but more from, I had a spiritual perspective from it. And I really went down the stress management side. And I did still study lots of things, but I threw a lot of things, and I'm not saying I threw them completely away, but I realised that I had to start narrowing down what really worked for me. There's lots of things I invested crazy amounts of money, spent maybe a year, a couple of years studying, and then thought this is not for me. I took learning from it and I was able to apply it, and it helped me understand other things. But that is part of the healer's journey, right? Now, it's so easy just to follow what everyone else is doing, the protocol and whatever. And of course, you can go the opposite way. When someone's really in the rebellious archetype, they can just do things for the sake of doing it. And I've seen this as well. I saw this, and that's a whole other story with Reiki. People adding all their own channel and things, and people bringing all sorts of things into the bag. And their ego was running the show, their shadow in it, it was creating chaos. You can have that where people just want to be different for the sake of being different. They want to appear as if they are different or whatever, and then there's no true integrity in it. But there's a huge difference within you using your what you've learned and using it as a tool, and this is the difference, seeing them as tools, and recognizing what your purpose is. But so many healers get, therapists, counselors, coaches, get lost in the titles, the modalities, and they lose themselves, or they try and, because they've done that, they try and drag their tools or techniques and make them out to be fantastic for everything when they're not actually the best for certain things. So they're not being honest, they're not coming from integrity. And it's not sometimes always, on a conscious level, they're coming from programming, what they've been taught, and maybe just lack of awareness, right? So challenge number 2, right, is, misunderstanding the motivation, the core motivation that is actually driving you, right, to be a healer. Sometimes there's often different layers to why we became a healer. Now, I'm going to be honest, when I first studied healing, I was cajoled into it. And what I mean was, I went for healing. I was at the time studying to be a singer, right? My health was seriously deteriorating. I had 3 jobs, I didn't have a grant, and I had lots of things happen to me. I'd been mercury poisoned, and the doctors, which happens to a lot of young women, were not listening to lots of key serious things that had happened to me. And then I went to college. I loved my college course, my music course, my singing course, but the work, me trying to hold these jobs, being ill, was basically crumbling. So when I actually started to go for healing, I was actually just trying to maintain my college course. I just wanted to be well enough. I was young. I was someone that people would describe as always having a lot of energy, which was interesting and vibrant. I was always someone that was I loved to dance and, go to the disco and dance, and I'd do a lot of physical things. But, after those, I had this mercury situation. It was unbelievable how my body, seemed to kind of shut down, and I just couldn't, and nobody was helping me, and lots of things had happened at the time when I was doing that. The careers I was in, just things seemed to fall apart because I started having eyesight problems, and nobody was listening. So I decided to go down something that, another thing that I was really passionate about, and that's what I went down. So my first opening into the healing world was for my own healing, was just, I was desperate. I was actually coming from survival response. I was in resistance mode. I was young. I didn't want to be ill. I didn't want my life to be stopped. I just wanted to be, at that time, I thought, a singer, right? So I was pushing against that. But I was fascinated by healing, and I was always fascinated by spiritual growth and personal growth. So there was something there, and I was always regarded as caring, highly empathic. People always gravitated towards me and would tell me their problems, and sometimes it was overwhelming, but I always attracted people. And I also, from a young age, I remember teachers and things would want me to massage them, would want me to put their hands on them. It was like there was an element of the healing there, but I didn't recognise it, and I was so focused that at that first point I didn't. But as I started to try and find solutions to my own challenges, and as I become more aware of the industry and understand it, that's what motivated me. And I saw how much damage mainstream medical, I had so many things happen to me, and I also saw the options. It was insane, the options. It was also insane how I also noticed that there were some holistic practitioners and healers that were very switched on and were very about a whole holistic, but there was also people who were very dysfunctional. So that and we all have different levels of dysfunction, but it was just an observation. I thought, oh, wait a minute here, right? So I wanted to educate, but also, wanted to be the part healer. So there was the healer element, but actually my motivation was education, was the teacher element within that. I wanted out of my own pain my own suffering, my lack of people listening to me, even lack of compassion. I had so much discrimination, I had so much prejudice, I had so much people not, lots of things happened where the original wounds, whatever caused my health challenges, there was more wounding coming from people who were so in their own wounds, doctors in their own wounds, nurses in their own wounds, healers, therapists in their own wounds. So it's interesting the work that I ended up doing. And my first motivation changed, and I didn't want other people. I wanted to reduce the suffering and the pain that other people went through. And one of the biggest things was I wanted to empower. Now, you can teach people through empowerment, right? So that was one of the big things. So you have to be able to, as a healer, understand the motivation. And I go into a bit about this in my new module, the foundations to, it's the foundations to the Wounded Healer. And it's module 1, and it's actually part of a new course that I will be coming out with over the next month or so. And I decided I was just going to bring out the module 1 first, because I think there's a lot of key things showing up right now in the world. And for example, healers and people are very conscious in what we might call sensitive souls, recognise at a soul level that their work is changing dramatically. And they have to be far more clearer in their purpose, far more aligned, and take their work to a brand new level. And if you cannot see the basic shadows that is within you as a healer, you will really struggle to empower and to support your clients in the best way. One of the biggest things that I have come to question a lot is how a lot of healing modalities are taught. And, I went down the, after training as a healer, I went down, studied things like counselling, psychotherapy and all that. And then I started to realise how many things were not taught in healing. And I always had concerns the way that a lot of healing modalities started to get less and later. The training seems to get shorter and more faster training. And people coming out, meaning well with the right, what they thought was positive intentions, but lacking awareness. And a lot of people say, compassion and, being compassionate and having the right intention is the most important thing. But I think awareness is, because people can have these things, but when they lack awareness, they can do more harm than good. Things can be paved with positive intentions, but if you have lack of understanding and wisdom in a certain area and you can't see something, you're looking at it through a distorted lens. You're only seeing it through your lens. So I think it's really important for us to understand that, right? Now, when you've not, there's a saying, when you're a physician, you're supposed to heal thyself, and there's also another saying, do no harm, right? But the reality is, no one is completely healed. We all have different wounds. I remember someone said to a friend of mine, she should not be doing the work she's doing because she's not fully healed. Now, I have never met a healer that's fully healed, right? So I think there's a distortion in that, and there's an egoic element of what that actually means. I know there's healers, and I've met them. I've worked for counselling organisations, and I've been shocked at the level of medication that people are on for their mental health. I mean, we're talking extraordinary things that, I would be comatose, right? And people with, doing energy work, and they're drinking heavily, right? Or whatever it is, right? So I think that can, of course, we're all working towards, and I've worked really hard. I spent 10 years, doing a lot of inner work in myself before I actually charged as a healer, right? Because I felt strongly about it, but I was still not perfect. I still am not, right? So we're all ongoing, right? But we have to see the shadows within ourselves, right? Now, challenge 3 is the actual physical cost of the shadow or the biological cost of the shadow. So what do I mean by that? So often, as I've said in challenge 2, our wounding can be our biggest motivator, but it can be also the shadow. So when we understand that some of our motivations can be paved with the shadow. For example, I spent most of my life as what you would call an empath, a highly sensitive empath, an overgiver, a nurturer, a helper, a caregiver, right? Now, what does that mean from an archetypal perspective? I would want to help people, and I would naturally want to do it, and I don't even think about it. It's an automatic reflex. But that costs me dearly, and I wanted to help people because no one helped me, right? Or they didn't help me the way that I deserved to be helped and supported. But there was a lot of wins, and there was still, there's things that you still work through. And I would have challenges, particularly even in business, with clients that, certain clients that were very reckless, very rebellious, and so stuck in their pain wounds that they would be doing dangerous practice. So one of the things that I started to do in my work was make sure that I was only working with really experienced healers that had the same level of values, right? And while I was doing that, I was working on myself, right? And we still were always working on ourselves, right? But one of the things that I found that when I worked with clients, not just in that, I also helped empaths and sensitives, but even though we all can be an inner victim, I remember one time, this was a long time ago, when I had a group, even though I also was always specialised in stress management. That was one of the big things, and taught meditation and relaxation therapy. But I had an empaths and sensitives group. And I remember the cost that some of that came because I had some of my wound, and it was this overgiver, and I was seen as a softie. And I would keep getting these messages, even though I gave so much for free. I would get all these messages, please, can you just give me that course for free? Or please, because my circumstances. And I tracked, it was really interesting, even though there was people that were very empathic and sensitive, there was also people with strong narcissistic traits who were identifying as the empath, right? And my shadow of also the people pleaser, the overgiving, and maybe I used to always have this unfound guilt, and if I wasn't trying to help people, really cost me dearly as a healer. And my own also perception, I was someone, because I had been literally ripped off a lot of times, saying all sorts of things. This will definitely help you, and we know this or this, and desperate. And I remember particularly one time, I was told that I had threatened eye loss. And on one level, I was conscious, right, no, that's not going to happen. I'm going to do everything to stop that happening. But I was young, there was a fear there. And I was looking for as many solutions. And believe me, people sold me the crazy solutions. And some, I saw it come. Some of it, I fell for it, right? Because I was in my own wounding. I was in my own fear, right? And I was just desperate to get the right help. Now, when we're in our own wounds, right, we're far more open to all sorts of things. And if you're very empathic and sensitive, the problem with lots of empaths, and this was a huge problem for me, that I would drop my energy to match people that I felt maybe, and it sounds terrible, but maybe sorry for, there was a level of empathy, over empathy, but also, thinking, oh my goodness. So I'd drop. I would drop my charges because I thought everybody was in the situation what I was in. I spent a large part of my life being on benefits and trying to do everything to be able to get the money to help me. And at times I'd be brokenhearted because I didn't have any money. Now, my parents did what they could to try and help me, but it was crazy money sometimes we were spending on trying to get solutions because there was so much went on. And when you And when you are a wounded healer and you don't see your shadow, right, and you don't even see the most obvious shadows, your physical body, your business starts paying the price, right? As an empath, there's so many things that can happen in a business that can be related to your shadow that can cause all sorts of situations. Now, empaths and sensitives, your nervous system is already so finely tuned to the world, and of course there's lots of the powerful qualities and things that make you great healers. So the empath's ability to sense, feel, move, see, and depending on what type of empath you are, because there's people that will see energy more quicker, sense energy, sense what's moving, depending on what your particular gift is. These are all great, but they can also come, like every gift, there's the light and the shadow. And if you are constantly aware of everybody's wounds, but you think that you're the one that has to fix them all, and you think as a healer, just because that you're a healer, that you're there to heal everybody and help them with all the wounds, well, you will absolutely burn yourself out. You'll overgive to a point of absolute insanity. And you will also pick up a lot of their stuff. One of the things that I noticed was being vulnerable to other people's attachments at certain point, and I had to really stamp down, and I thought, why am I attracting these type of people? And these are the things you've got to understand, right? So looking at all of these things is really important. That's why inner work and things like that is really important. And if you've not seen my video, there's a main video when I talk about the genes there's a longer video, and I have cut little short videos, snippets of it, but I do have a big video about the empath genes and the sensitive, and there's certain things that we're biologically designed to do, and many empaths and sensitives, for example, are more naturally aligned as healers or creatives, right? But the reality is there's often empaths, like the empath, a lot of the unruly empath, and I was an unruly empath for a large part of my life, is there's a dysfunction. Your energy is always out there instead of there, and you're more aware of everybody else's problems than actually being aware of your own at times, and you struggle to connect with what you really want. And there's a lot of gifts when you can actually pick up lots of things about people that they can't see themselves, and therapy work, and it can help quicken processes. But it's very ungrounding and uncentering, and the more ungrounded and uncentered you are biologically, that plays havoc with your nervous system. So again, it's a chicken and an egg scenario. So these are really, really important. Now, the reason that I've created I always had a free course for the Wounded Healer, but I've done this new module. As I said, it's going to be part of a bigger course, and it's the Foundations of Wounded Healer, and we look at what does it really mean to be the Wounded Healer from an archetypal perspective, the power in it, the superpower in it, and the shadow element, and looking at Chiron's, the Chiron wound from that perspective, and also Carol Jung's perspective on the Wounded Healer. And the foundational course is just a mini course to help you look and to start exploring your motivations, and to see the deeper motivation, that it helps you align your business, in the right way. Often when you start looking at the motivations behind, you see some things that you never noticed, which sometimes helps you see, all right, that's why I'm not supposed to be that type of healer. Or that's why I'm supposed to be a therapist. Or that's why I'm supposed to be actually a coach. I can use some of my healing tools. Or that's why I'm supposed to be a teacher, right? Or this is why I'm not meant to work with these clients. Or this is why I need to work on this. So it's a foundation. It is just, the foundations to a more advanced course. But, I would check that out. and make sure that you check out some of my other resources underneath that. And I also do have a video about, you know, if you're someone that suffers from empath fatigue and burnout and things like that, there's one there. But what I would say is, if you don't understand your motives and you don't really, and if you're a healer and you just show up as a healer who just studies the actual techniques and modalities and doesn't do the inner work, you're not as much as a powerful channel, first of all, for your clients. You're not able to be as present, and you're not able to build your business in a way that feels aligned. Because see, when you build a business around things that are not completely aligned, not you leak energy, and that's another biological cost. Business models can either create havoc with your personal energy and your alignment, or they can really work for you. And there's reasons why, for example, I changed a lot of the business models that I've used through the years, and I tweak certain things, because as an empath, as someone who still has the tendency to overgive, there are certain things that I need to put in place in my business. Now, I did make last year, and I think it was this year, last year, I created a membership. And there was a lot of things supposed to happen. And some memberships have just in the past not been the best thing for me, but for a lot of reasons I wanted to, it was more a community, but I used a membership design. And a lot of things happened where, again, it was showing up, where my overgiving went to help others, and it wasn't, there was a lot of factors. It wasn't just about clients, it was helping other healers. It kind of fired back at me, and it made me realise that I wasn't looking after myself first. I didn't have the strong boundaries, and there were certain things I hadn't in play, and I ended up leaking a lot of energy when, at a time I thought, I don't have this energy to leak. So it's really, really important. So if you are, you want to really start, taking your healing work and your awareness to a new level, and you want to start leading the way and feel more strong, centered, and empowered in your healing work, right? Check out the foundation of the Wounded Healer. It is I think it's called the now Understanding the Wounded Healer Within, but I might slightly tweak that as the main course. But I will put a link, and you'll see it will say module 1 on it. Okay, so thank you for watching. If any of this resonates with you, please don't be shy about commenting. It helps, as you can understand. A lot of these channels can be very hard to get the views, and a lot of us put a lot of work to help people and to give for free. And sometimes, a lot of people sometimes watch, but they don't always engage or share or comment. And these things can make a big difference, because it can help the algorithm. But have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching, and make sure you check out the free resources and the foundations to the Wounded Healer module. Okay.